Hi, I'm Jim, and welcome back. Today we're diving in one of the hottest topics on everyone's mind. Will CIG release Star Citizen 4.0 by the end of this year, in 2024? Well, I think it will, but there are some caveats about 4.0 that I think we should talk about. Also, if you find yourself hearing this intro over and over, consider dropping a sub, or if you're feeling really of interest, check out the video description for a link to my Discord. I try to be around in voice or chat channels as often as I can, and I'd love to hear from you. But back to the topic, let's jump right into it. So where do we stand right now with Star Citizen's development? Well, as of right now, we're currently on version 3.24, which have had several exciting updates that have brought new content, features, and improvements along the way, along with the newest slew of game-breaking bugs that we all get to experience. The recent updates have focused on expanding our infrastructure within the persistent universe, including new gameplay elements like dynamic events, new vehicles, and a complete restructure of how we store our ships and how we interact with cargo and inventory. And the problem is that, while yes, we've gotten a large amount of updates and some pretty large changes to how things are done within the game this year, they are often delivered in a pretty broken state. That what should have been an enjoyable change is, at least for the moment, a more tedious process to collect and load our ships. And while I do think that we will ultimately end up enjoying many of the recent changes and just learning to live with some of the others, but the amount of glitches and bugs that we're having to endure make it a somewhat miserable experience while we wait on the devs to correct the errors that we're encountering. The development roadmap has been moving steadily forward, but we all know that the journey of Star Citizen has been anything but predictable and anything but fast-paced. CIG is known for its ambitious plans, and honestly, they're equally well known for scope creep. So the big question is, can they deliver on 4.0 by the end of this year? Now let's take a look at what we're supposed to be getting in 4.0. Now, in spite of my general disdain for the phrase, 4.0 will ultimately be a game changer. If you look back at the now long development cycle for Star Citizen, we started with the hangar module, which was little more than just an environment where we could use to view our ships. Followed up with Arena Commander, which gave us our first ability to actually fly our ships and shoot at some stuff. We then got 2.0, which was our first experience in what CIG called their persistent universe. And while it shared many things with what we currently have, it almost feels odd to compare the two, as the game at this point and the game it was at 2.0 are in vastly different states. All of these things paved the way for our current patch cycle of 3.0, where we gained the access to planetary surfaces for the first time, and ultimately to everything we currently have in the game. So what is it that makes 4.0 such a big deal? Well, the crux of it is server meshing. It is honestly the largest component of what 4.0 will bring to the game. And while of course Pyro is what everyone is excited to experience, given how we have been stuck inside Stanton now for several years, it's the server meshing and the jump gate system that'll allow for multiple systems to exist for us to explore. And many are speculating that we could easily see systems like Nyx added to the game in a reasonable time frame after 4.0. If you weren't aware, at least one planet from Nyx used to be in Stanton several years ago, before it was removed from the system, and we have always been assured by CIG that they've kept that planet and its main POI of Levski up to date as they've added new features and systems into the game. We're supposed to be getting a slew of additional game features and mechanics and location types, from things as minor as new additional player customizations to locations like asteroid bases and contested zones. We're supposed to be seeing an expansion to our ship's engineering gameplay via life support systems, power management, and repairs, and fire hazards we'll have to deal with from time to time. Personally, I'm looking forward to the MFD and HUD rework, as I'm a big fan of condensed minimalism when it comes to what's being shown to me. I prefer seeing only information that's kind of relevant to my current needs. But let's be honest, most people are just excited about a new system to live in and explore, and those feelings are completely valid. Pyro is going to be our first glimpse of what it looks like to live in a system that is both significantly larger than Stanton, which will change how players choose to load their ships. It'll also be interesting to see how players choose to interact with one another, given the lawless nature of Pyro. Now, I personally have my own opinions on how that's going to go, but until it's actually in game, it's really all just speculative. And I wish they'd just go ahead and release a ship like the Idris to players, especially considering it's basically done. That way players have a light carrier available, as I think that need for that type of ship will be amplified within a system like Pyro. If the blocker for releasing the Idris is, say, something along the railgun and worrying that there aren't many counters for it at the moment, we'll just disable it. And if they already have the civilian model complete, just release that instead and give that to people as a loaner. I truly believe it would work just to put both the Polaris and the Idris into the game at the same time. But at the end of the day, What do I know? It's important to consider the challenges CIG is facing. Even with all the progress made so far, the persistent universe is kind of riddled with bugs and performance issues. We still have issues that have remained on the issue council, patch after patch after patch. And though those tend to be the issues with lesser impact on the average gaming session, they do still exist. And with the introduction of new mechanics and locations, technologies, ships, these will all unfortunately bring with them more complexity and by extension, more bugs and frustrations. And I'm not expecting anything with regards to that to change anytime soon. The game is, after all, in active development. And while sure, it's been that way for a while, it is unfortunately just the nature of the beast that as features are added, that bugs and other problems will come with them. So what does the community think? Well, opinions are, as always, pretty mixed. Some people are cautiously optimistic, hoping that CIG will finally deliver on its promise of 4.0 this year, while others are understandably skeptical, given CIG's history of delays, over-promising, and under-delivering. We have all likely experienced seeing something on the roadmap that we're very interested in, only to see it be pushed from one patch to the next, and then possibly even disappearing entirely, all without seemingly a word from CIG over what the blocker was and when or if ever we expect to be able to see that item delivered. CIG's track record for sticking to its release dates aren't exactly the best. That being said, I do personally feel like we have seen some of the most progress within the game this past year, more so than any previous year, at least with my own experience since I've started playing back in 3.8, I think it was. So as I stated, I kind of opened this video with my conclusion at the beginning of it. After consuming a myriad of different opinions on the topic through varying media types, whether that was here on YouTube or through Reddit or Discord or Twitter or X, I have honestly come to the conclusion that we will likely see 4.0 this year. Now, as I stated, there is a caveat to that conclusion, and that caveat is that it may not be in its final form. If you've been paying attention to some of the recent updates, you'll notice that CIG currently seem to be taking a pretty harsh all-hands-on-deck approach within these last few weeks. I knew it was crunch time when I saw them pushing a PTU update to 3.24 before it went live 2 Sundays ago. That's not a typical thing we see. We have, in fact, seen them push a PTU build on late Friday that breaks the PTU just to say, whoops, our bad, we'll try that again on Monday. And again, just this last weekend, there were several hot fixes pushed onto the now live 3.24 servers to fix some of the major problems people are having while trying to run cargo missions. I was personally a bit shocked when we saw 3.24 go from the PTU to live, as honestly the live server is just now starting to feel like it's in the status we would normally be seeing it to go Wave 1 access on the PTU. Typically when we see all waves gain PTU access, it's been in a pretty good state, and the devs are likely just opening the floodgates to see how everything interacts with a much higher user count before pushing it to live. Now, do I take this as CIG just being sloppy? No, I think more reasonably, as with most decisions, there were many factors in play. Firstly, schedule. I think they need it off their plate, so to speak. And I've read that some people think there are some blockers in 3.24 that would stop a 4.0 deployment, so that 3.24 being out is a hard requirement for 4.0 to follow. Secondly, if you played 3.24 on the PTU, it was horrible. And while yes, I know everyone hates the state it's in currently, and those are very valid opinions, but it was bad on 3.24. I truly think they kept opening waves, not because they were increasing the stability, but frankly, I think they needed the increase in player count to keep bug smashing. I think people would log in, try it out, and come to the conclusion that I did. This is terrible. I think I played, or rather tried to play, 3.24 on the PTU for around 15 hours in total. And despite multiple tries and a lot of effort on my part, I was never able to complete a single cargo mission. That's how bad it was. I, like many others, just decided for my own sanity to put it down and just wait it out. And yeah, I hear you. Jim, I thought we were talking about 4.0 here. Why are you going on and on about 3.24? Well, I'm glad you asked. Totally not fake person. I think CIG is well aware of the expectation of 4.0 releasing this year, and I believe they're dead set on delivering that. My point here is that what 4.0 is actually pretty subjective. All they really have to deliver to keep the promise is server meshing, pyro, and the ability to jump from one system to the next. The quality of that release, though, now while I'm sure they have every intention to release it in as finished of a state as they can, at the end of the day, 4.0 is 4.0 is 4.0. I also think that if push came to shove, which it probably will. They would be more than willing to cut the build down of anything other than those mentioned items if the schedule just didn't allow for the polish they want to, say, life support or fire or the MFDs or contested zones or anything else coming in 4.0. Please leave the asteroid bases. And it's plausible that the main deliverables of 4.0 are essentially ready to ship. It's unlikely, but it is plausible. But I want to know what your thoughts are. Do you expect to see 4.0 this year? And if yes, like in what state do you expect it'll be delivered? Do you think it'll come with everything we hope? Or do you think we'll get more of a modest serving of 4.0? And hey, if you find yourself enjoying these videos, be sure to hit that like button. Drop me a sub. Leave me a comment. Or like I said, if you're really adventurous, join the Discord. Come yell at me over there. But until next time, fly safe, and I'll see you in the verse.